thing about it, which was interesting, was that you could start things from scratch that you could build, and you could do things. And there weren't a lot of ideas because in the 90s, the Russians didn't really understand it yet. It was just breaking up. And Russians are really, really careful about what they already own. Like if this is a Coke bottle, right? So, and I'm not going to sell it for less than 10 or whatever, because it's like the only one I got, and I'm probably not going to get another one. And I'm going to make sure that I take care of it. On one side, on the other side is they have there's this whole thing in the psyche about everything is that was already made is for Russians, and the people using it are allowed to use it in a sense, and exploit it and do it. But it's really all belongs to the state. If they want to take something back or they want to do something that So the key was just starting stuff from scratch.
From scratch, right. And so when did you first go there?
My first trip was in 83. No, 84.
84. Okay. And what capacity?
Well, I worked. I graduated from college. I went to work for Steve Wozniak.
Okay.
Apple Computers, and we did these big music festivals in California.
The US Festival, yeah.
The US festivals had what were the first really ever with the Russians, what they call the space bridges
Evelyn Messenger?
Yeah.
I spoke with her.
Evelyn and Kim produced it for me.
Okay.
I was the guy head of production and started all that.
All right.
They had done it before on a smaller scale. We did it on a larger scale.
Okay.
So I went with Jim, and to this day remain a big fan of his. And that led to a whole bunch of stuff. Just kept going. And then and around the late 80s, when things were starting to open up, I could see the split happening between the Ministry of Communications and Gostel Radio.
Yeah.
So Gostel Radio was the TV guys.
Right.
They didn't have the frequencies or the transmitters. It was all with the Ministry of Communications. The Ministry of Communications didn't like the Gostel Radio guys because they were doing all the work, and they were making all the programming. So I started bonding with all these Ministry of Communications guys, tower operators, all that kind of stuff, and said, let's build our own. And that's how we operate.
Well, how'd you become aware of this split?
I just met, I was working on those space bridges because the space bridges were a big deal.
Yeah.
They were a really big deal to the Russians. In fact, when I first landed in Moscow, and I think it was 83 or 84. I get off the plane and I was 23 years old, kind of long hair, surf California, all this kind of stuff. And there were three guys at the jetway, saying, where's Vice President Gerwe? I had to convince them who I was and everything. And, so it was a big deal to them. And so, because it went on primetime Channel 1, and it was Steve Wozniak, and it was Apple Computers. It was all that, and they could tape it and control it. It was very good propaganda for them.
Yep.
And that led to the Donahue-Posner debates, all that stuff.
So were you part of that as well? That part of the space bridge for Donahue-Posner?
I actually didn't produce them. It was Posner and Donahue.
Okay.
But Posner got started on space bridges. Hickman found him in Russian radio. And he was very articulate and very smart and said, hey, look, we need this guy on television. That started Posner's television career.
Really? Fantastic. And did you have any particular interest in Russia, or is this just happenstance?
Californian. I'm still
California, world peace.
I'm still an 18-year-old Californian. I mean, I haven't changed.
Yeah.
And with Hickman, we started doing all this kind of selling films for rubles. And so we got into all these ruble exchanges, how to convert rubles. It was a lot of wild stuff between 84 and 90. And then 90, when perestroika and all this kind of stuff started opening up, I said, let's do a radio station. We started there are 2 radio stations that started on Western FM, 88 to 106.
Yeah.
It didn't exist then. There was Stalin's
there was no FM.
62 to 73 megahertz.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which no Western receiver could receive, so they designed it that way. We call it Stalin's FM. Our station called Radio Maximum. And Europa Plus, it was a French radio station, launched ours. So this is a true story too. I mean, so ours launched on December 25th, 1991.
Oh, the day Gorbachev resigned.
December 25th, 1991. It was. We decided we'd start a week early and play all Beatles music.
Yeah.
No station ID, no anything, just all Beatles music, and started with All You Need Is Love and all that kind of stuff. So, and it was Moscow News, Moskovsky Novosti was our partner. So I spent, a year negotiating this agreement, and we go on the air, and the chief editor, Yavlikov, who you never really saw, who was this super huge big boss, comes running in like an hour later and says, the Soviet Union just broke up. I thought he was kidding, So I'm going to go on radio and that's it. And I said, wait a second, we have no news. I don't care what. No news. So we negotiated this kind of terse 2-sentence thing and put it on the air every hour.
Just an announcement: your country is no longer in.
No. It was just a very simple statement of fact that today Boris Yeltsin and blah 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 signed a protocol. Nothing good or bad in Ukraine. That's it. 2 sentences.
Oh wow!
You framed it.
Yeah, and that was interspersed with Beatles songs.
It's at the top of the hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so it went for a week.
Yeah.
And then on December 31st, on New Year's Eve, which is a big deal to the Russians, we launched the radio station. Radio Maximum launched officially.
How did you launch? How did you make Russians aware that there was this new way of?
It was word of mouth was the best. The best advertising. It was just fantastic. Western FM. We didn't need any advertising at all. Everyone knew about it right away. And then it was like, who was cool and had the receivers that could receive 88 to 106.
Right.
Because they were making them, they had the dual bands. A lot of for a year or two, the manufacturers, it was easier for them just to put a 62 to 73 megahertz bandwidth on an existing radio that they already had. So it's kind of a bolt-on. So a lot of people had the 88 to 106, but there was just nothing there. So all of a sudden you have Madonna and the Beatles and everything. It took off like a rocket.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the Beatles were already super popular in Russia anyway. So you just, yeah. And how did you produce it? Did you use Russians, or were you sitting there as a DJ? Or
when that actually started, it was owned by myself as an 18-year-old Californian, and a company called Westwood One Radio Networks. Westwood One. That's the biggest, radio software programming company in the world. $1 billion, NASDAQ listed, biggest programming company, right?
Right.
And Harris Corporation, which is the biggest producer of transmitters in the world. Okay.
Right.
So I went to these guys and said, hey, I can get radio licenses and let's build radio stations in Russia. Let's build one in every city.
Yeah.
Own stations and everything. And they go, okay, great. And actually the funny thing is, the Westwood One guy said, no, we'll do it ourselves. And so he gets on his plane, flies to Moscow, right? Takes his wife, Mary Turner is her name, who was a famous radio personality. They stay at the most expensive hotel, and she goes to take a bath and turns on the bath, and it comes out yellow. Freaks out, completely loses it. And they went to the first few meetings, and I had a few questions. They were saying, like, what's a radio, and how does this work? I had no idea. So they got on his jet that afternoon, flew back and called me from the plane and said, go do your deal. No problem. But we had this little guy and this huge radio. They had Casey's Top 40, and they had all the big stuff,
right?
All the radio stuff. And they gave us an expert, a guy named Bert Kleinman, who really did all the work. And Harris started shipping transmitters.
Okay. So you were a new market for Harris.
Ministry of Communications guys, they get a brand new Harris transmitter. It was like, like a Rolls Royce rolling into their showroom, right? So now I'm friends with all of them. They're calling me, hey, I want one of those. So yeah, it's kind of how it started.
Yeah. So you built how many stations did you end up with?
Well, so we launched Radio Maximum. We launched Radio Maximum in '92. Actually, started at the end of '91, and 6 months later, I get called into a meeting, and I had a lot of meetings at the Ministry of Communications where they would not give you their names or their cards or a lot of guys sat there and they didn't say anything. You ask them a question, they just wouldn't say anything. I mean, it was, so there one guy ran the meeting. So I'm in this meeting, one of those meetings, about 2 or 3 a year. And this guy sitting down there, goes, hey, I'm from St. Petersburg, and I have the first 24-hour private television stations license in the country. They had, the first one was, I forgot the 2x2, actually, I think is what it was called, on Moscow, which was.
I remember a station called that. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't a station. It was a 6-hour block.
Okay.
And there was another one, I forgot what it was called, but 2x2. Yeah, I think it was 2x2. But this guy had a 24-hour, frequency, channel 7, and so I said, sure. I had no idea what we're doing with television. These guys were saying, oh, that radio's small, TV is the way to go, And so we built a TV station there. It was the most painful experience I ever had. I'm American, so we know ABC, CBS, CBS. They own those stations in the big cities, and they launch them all. They launch them, then they connect them all by affiliate agreements.
Right.
Right. You're familiar with that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I figured, well, the best way to do this.
By the way, my wife was a DJ on WBCN in Boston, so okay. I know a little about this stuff. So,
all right. So we built this TV station in St. Petersburg. And over a year or two, go see all his buddies in the other big cities like Nizhny Novgorod, Ufa, Yekaterinburg, and we built stations there. And then we came to Moscow and bought a station or a license on UHF, which nobody could see. So they gave us a license. They figured, oh, they'll sit out there. So we go into Moscow Cable, and we paid Moscow Cable $5 million. We lent them $5 million. They never paid us back. We lent them $5 million, and they rewired the whole city. The whole city for $5 million. I mean, it was $5 million. I mean,
yeah.
They just put it in their plan and kept the $5 million.
Right. Whoa. And you were like a small company, sort of jumping from around, or were you growing as did you become a big company?
We were growing faster. I mean, literally 10 years went by. It was just a blur.
Yeah. It sounds like it. And did you know any Russian at the time while you were doing this?
I still don't speak very good Russian. Yeah, I mean, I know, are you single? And kind of my steak medium rare, and let's go home now.
Yeah, the key phrases. Yeah.
Right. But what I actually did was I actually tried to hire really smart, talented Soviets,
right?
Russians, right?
Yeah.
I said, look, just go work the deal, and when you have a question, come back to me. This is what we want. Here's our strategy.
Right.
Here's our strategy. Right. So we're gonna go to Vladimir's buddies and say, look, we'll give you a Harris transmitter. We'll help you hook it up. We'll send technicians. You'll have the most beautiful, the guy's salivating.
Right.
You got to get the frequency, and you got to put it into the company, and it's got to be nice and clean, and la 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 la, that kind of stuff. And so they got the drill. I sat there most of the time. It was completely okay with me. I had meetings where I didn't say anything.
Wow.
Except hello and how you doing? This is wonderful.
Yeah.
This is
So
fun.
how'd you find these smart Russians?
Well, there's really only three things in life, I think, right? Your strategy, what you're doing, what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah.
And then what's the third? I just lost my mind. So strategy.
It's not money, huh?
Everything else follows, really. So
yeah, right.
It's always, for me, it's always about people and team building, and I mean, there was a time when 6 of the 8 television networks in Russia were run by people that worked for me. That I hired from Mars candy bars, and it's I was just a cheerleader, really.
Yeah, yeah, and so what was it?
What you really try to do is troubleshoot. You start figuring out, they're going to try to steal. They're going to get, they're not going to say where the problems are, and so you spend a lot of time troubleshooting.
Yeah,
trying to figure out where the problem is.
Right. Right.
What's weird in this? What's weird here? So
right. And weird, when you say that, weird on your side or on your partner's side, or both?
Both. Yeah. Mostly on the Russian side. I mean, I lived in Moscow, so
yeah,
it was mostly on the Russian side. The American was not so weird, because it's pretty simple. They either understood it or they not. They either supported it or they didn't.
Right. Right.
America was not so weird. Only the stories like Norm Pattis, which is, I think it's the funniest thing in the world. We did Hickman. Hickman tell you the story about Billy Joel coming to Billy Joel tour. So Christy Brinkley comes too. They send a semi of Evian water. So they would take the Evian and pour it into the bathroom, And she take
poured it into the bathtub?
Yeah.
Holy shit. Wow.
And I of course I get tasked with doing this, right? So, and I'm standing next to her and she goes, hey, look, I'm not a princess and I'm not trying to be difficult, but I can't put my skin that I make, $10 million a year on my skin on this in there. I can't do that. So they go in there and they scrub it and they clean it and they wash it and they pour Evian, take a bath, everybody be happy.
Wow. Yeah. That's it makes an impression. Yeah. So what kind of
to finish the story? So we did radio and then got totally distracted with television, and we built St. Petersburg and then 8 stations around Moscow.
Yeah.
Came to Moscow.
Yeah.
Right. Paid the cable guys. So it took them a year to rewire the whole city, and so we had perfect reception. I mean, all of a sudden, and we really didn't turn it on for a year.
Yeah.
We were testing it, and then we launched CTC Network, STS Network. And we'd figure we'd have, maybe 100 stations, 50 stations by the end of the year under affiliate agreements.
Yeah.
By the end of the first year, we had 300 stations and like 85% penetration of Russia.
Wow.
Because everybody had their own stations, and they were all the ministry guys were grabbing networks. Everybody was grabbing networks and building all this kind of stuff, but they didn't have any programming.
Right. Right. So you were the source of programming for them.
We were the source of programming, and it was all, government approved, and it was just entertainment. We didn't have any news. We had better penetration than half the TV networks that had all the coverage and all the press was ever. Nobody ever talked about us. I mean, and we were just perfectly happy with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Unless it was, so we did a movie every night at 9:00. Very simple programming. All this kind of stuff. And
where'd you get the programming? Did you get old Soviet stuff or did you get American stuff?
Oh, all Western.
All Western. Yeah.
As much as we could afford, which was not a lot. I mean.
Yeah. So did you have Dallas? Were you the ones that put Dallas on TV?
No, well, I think we might have done Dallas. Yeah, I don't know. We didn't do the soaps; those were on state television.
Yeah,
like
the Mexican
Santa
stuff,
Barbara and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think Dallas was ours actually. We had Hill Street Blues. Hill Street Blues was our first one.
Oh wow! Okay. Wow, that must have made a big impression on Russians.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the movie was the big thing, and then we started producing local Russian series. And those were really big. That's what really made the company, actually.
I see. Were those crime series ones and St. Petersburg crime series?
Yeah, there was one called Bednai Nastia, and there was one called I forgot the name. Bednai Nastia was the first kind of real Russian-produced youth, cool, edgy. What's her name? Oh no, I can't remember. It's about the girl. I can't remember it. So, and then the 1998 crisis hit.
Yeah.
So we cut the staff from 1,000 to 200, and then kept at this 200 level, and the market came back, and our profits just went up.
Yeah.
We just kept the low overhead.
Yeah.
And then we went public on NASDAQ.
Wow.
2.3 billion.
2.3 billion. And what year did it
went up to 4?
Huh?
It went up to 4.
Whoa. When did you go public? What year?
2016.
2016. It was a big year for you.
No, it was 2010. I should know that.
Yeah.
2010.
2010.
Yeah.
Okay, so you lived through not only the 1998 crisis, but the 2008, 2009 crisis as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were nasty.
Yeah.
I remember I was there when the White House was being attacked. I was there when they defaulted on the loans.
Yep.
June 1, 2006. Jeez, I might.
2006.
Yeah, June 1, 2006.
Okay. So you were what were you, a California or a New York company? What kind of company were you?
Delaware.
A Delaware company? Okay. Yeah. And you didn't have any, did you have to get special permissions or oversight in Russia or nothing?
No.
No?
I was there from the early space bridges, so they kind of were okay with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so all this whole period where, all the wars were going on over control of media, you were kind of on the side, right? Is that, you weren't paying attention?
Going better penetration and putting more movies on,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, till I remember these fights with Guzinski and all these sort of oligarchs.
We had our problems with Guzinski.
Yeah.
What fight you mean with the government?
With the government, I mean, because these guys who owned the media outlets, as I understand it, saw them as a avenue of political influence, which would allow them to have economic opportunities. Yep. Right.
You're absolutely. Primarily, Guzinski and Berezovsky got sent out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you saw yourself as purely entertainment.
I went to the Kremlin once a year and said, thank you very much. Everything's fine. No, we're not doing any news, and no, we're not going to do any politics. Can I give you a ticket to our opening of this TV series that's coming up? And thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. So and that lasted through a whole lot of political change. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was some, I remember the one that probably hurt the most was when they defaulted on the debt.
Yeah.
And the ruble tanked.
Right, in '98. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had guys, we were very close to our team, and very close. And these guys were, I remember, like the mid-level guys had worked for me for years and had saved over 2 or 3 years, like 50,000 or 60,000, the ruble equivalent of half their salary for several years. And it just became worthless overnight.
Yeah. God, that was tragic.
And those guys are living with their wife, their new wedding, their new marriage, and they're living with their grandmother and their father and all of that kind of stuff. So, we really wanted to get them out in apartments and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had I spent a lot of time we had one of our a British guy got killed in a gay hate crime.
Whoa.
We had one of our head of advertising sales husband was shot on Gospel Radio when they were fighting at Gospel Radio. We had to we convinced the Dutch ambassador to send a medevac plane, because he was shot, and the Russians weren't doing a very good job with fixing him, and so they sent a plane, and it was a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah, that one was at 93 when that happened.
Yeah, it was when they stormed the White House. There was a big fight. There was much shooting out of the Gospel Radio.
Right.
He was a reporter. He popped the camera up and said they were giving a report, and somebody shot him.
Wow. And he survived?
He did.
Yeah. Did you ever have gangsters lean on you? Did you have to have Krisha?
Pardon me?
Did you have gangsters lean on you, or did you have to have Krisha for that?
I get asked that question a lot. I mean,
sorry, I have to ask it. It's not
no. I look.
But,
I'm 6'6" personally. So we always had these very close friends. We never had any Krisha. We never played any bribes. The only thing we insisted is that they had their shares in our joint venture. So if you call that a bribe, you call it a bribe. To me, it's just building a good business. So
right.
That was the key to us, and we operate under licenses. We had state licenses, we had TV licenses.
Right.
So we never really had any problems.
Yeah.
Now
so
the problem was that when we got all of a sudden we're like the third biggest network in the country, and it's owned by Americans and me. And so
right.
So I had all these meetings with people like Guzinski saying, "Oh, you're so smart, but you should give it to us now because I'll take it now," kind of thing. And we ended up doing a deal with Alpha Group Friedman.
Yeah.
Which was a business arrangement. They bought 25% of the network. They didn't want to own more because they wanted to say they had a minority stake, and they couldn't force it, and but they wanted to have and they were the best partners, just the best.
Yeah.
Friedman and Avon, they were just best. And so Friedman invested $10 million and sold it 10 years later for $1.1 billion.
Whoa.
So they liked the deal. They liked us.
I guess they did. Yeah.
But no, so we always did deals with people and partnerships and built it intelligently.
Right. So
there was a period of time though when we were a little too big. I was a little worried.
Well, when did Alpha get in?
About that time. Our strategy was always, because if you go to a Russian partner and you don't have much, they take everything.
Yeah.
So our strategy was always build as much as you can, get as far as you can, and then bring a partner in. At least you're in a position of strength.
Right.
Right. And you have something they want, and you don't have to do a deal with them. I did have some conversations. There were some guys that I knew in the licensing division. One in particular, very honorable man, and we talked about this. That I'll not, because he's saying, look, I can't keep giving you licenses. You're an American-owned company. This is not right. And so we did the whole strategy together and implemented. And Alpha was just great. I cannot tell you how good of a partner they were.
And what does that mean to you? They were a good partner.
They did everything they said. They kept all the funny business away from it. Never had to deal with it. They provided good advice. It was a business deal. It wasn't about Krisha or you're going to do this, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Now, if we would have, I maintain that all of this stuff is really pretty understandable. I mean, once you're there, I was in media, but even I knew that at that point, the state had decided all natural minerals and resources go to Russians.
Yeah.
They went out over a period of about a year or two and made offers to buy everybody out. at fair prices. They were gentlemanly, fair prices, I think.
Yeah.
I don't, but I know a little bit.
Yeah.
And people that got greedy, you know, deserve, you know, they not deserve is not the right way to say it all, but they
it was
they
predictable.
created a lot of their own problems that they shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the people like Berezovsky and Kaczynski, they're just playing a bigger game. And
Yeah.
they lost that part of the game.
Yeah.
But when Putin came to power, you know, there's some great pictures. There's some, and I've got 7 more minutes. There's some great pictures of all of the oligarchs at the time. They're lined up in front of him.
Right.
They had these very famous meetings when he just came to power.
Yeah.
And you know, and Friedman was there, and I talked to him about it, and I knew some of the other ones that were there, and we talked about it because they were all interested in media, and they all, you know, always called me up and blah blah blah. And I was always really good friends with Posner, who was always really close to these guys. So they basically said, Putin just said this, guys, this is very, very simple, right? You have your stuff, okay? I'm not going to get in your business, okay? And you don't get in my business. And my business is politics and government and running this country. So we have a very, very clear, simple understanding. So if you get in my business, think of what it's going to be like if somebody attacked your business, what you would do.
Yeah.
And you guys are all a little bit more rougher than I am. And I think it's the way that he said it too, you know. That's the way the conversation went.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually believe that's what happened. And
yeah.
Now what happened at that point is you start shifting the power then. So a new contract to do this or this or this or this didn't go to the existing, or you know, they lost their influence on new stuff.
Right.
But they kept what they had.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah. And why? And was your going public getting out, or is your company still? Is the company Storytime still heavily involved in Russia?
No, completely out.
Completely out. Okay.
Yeah, my kids' trust owns some stuff there.
Yeah.
They own some TV networks with Sony, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm completely out. Yeah.
You're completely out. And
we still have a house there.
Huh?
We still go. My wife is Russian and still spend summers and we always go to New Year's and stuff like that. But I'm completely out.
Okay. And who?
I mean, you got to decide either you're going to become a lifer and do it all the time, or you know, get out.
Right.
I was never really a Russian, you know, guy, and I was never really into the language. And
yeah.
And you know, I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm out building other things.
Well, who owns those 300 whatever those stations that you?
Well, it's all wrapped up into a TV network.
Yeah.
Called CTC Media.
Yeah.
CTC Media. You just Google it and
yeah.
read about it. And Radio Maximum.
Yeah.
So they exist. They're still the same. They have new owners.
Right.
It's another story about media I could tell you, but you know, at one point it all consolidated into. There's 4 groups. There's ORT. There's RTR. There's Gazprom Media, and there's National Media Group. Kovachuk kind of control everything that's not the state.
Right.
And that's it. You can't. There's nothing else to be in the media.
Yeah.
And they're being very careful about controlling cable, and they're getting very much organized. So it's those 4 groups. There's nothing really in media anymore there. Maybe digital internet. You know, if I really was Russian and wanted to live there, and there's some cool stuff there, but not otherwise.
Yeah. And did the people who work for you spread out across this media landscape? I mean, are you kind of the godfather of this industry, if you will?
I wouldn't say I'm the godfather of the industry. I'm the guy that built the networks. You know, which there's TNT. There's several of them now that are kind of like that.
Yeah.
And they gradually then take over more and more of their stations because Russians don't like contracts. They like to control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. And all along, you expected this would happen at some point, right? That you would build something of value, you'd sell it and get out. You weren't there to.
No, I did multiple deals. I did radio, we did television, we did cable, we did magazines, Hello Magazine, and then I built a magazine group. publishing, you know, a book deal, you know. So I like, you know, I like to build things.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I've built 11 companies in 35 years and sold successfully 7 of them.